Hey guys, this is the ultimate list of turn-based JRPGs, my favorite one on every single console. Alright guys, you know the rules, no only in Japan or indie titles, and with that said, let's begin! And we're gonna start with...
PlayStation.
Right, so everyone knows Beyond the Beyond is the best RPG on the PS1. Hell no, it's Chrono Cross! I guess most people will either pick the Final Fantasy games or the Suikoden games even. Big fan of those two here, but Cross has been my favorite for decades. A unique follow-up to Trigger that nearly started as a text adventure, only for it to become a deep, complex, melancholic, and heartbreaking RPG masterpiece. Let's keep going. For the PS2 I picked Valkyrie Profile 2 Silmeria. Definitely Final Fantasy X or Persona 4 will be most people's choice here. I picked Silmeria because of my personal history with it. Not only because it also broke my heart like Chrono Cross did, but also because I hated it at first. After a second chance, I couldn't put the controller down for months. Like Cross, it's one of the very few JRPGs I've 100%ed in my entire life, but I still guarantee it's one tough, complex mofo not to be trifled with. Moving on with the PS3, Eternal Sonata. Here we have another hybrid like Valkyrie 2, one that mixes action with turn-based combat. One beautiful golden gem that's also quite challenging. Its uniqueness in both storytelling, visuals and battle system though are more than worth going through that challenge. I get the feeling most gamers will pick others as their best PS3 turn-based JRPG, but who knows, some of those others might still be in this video in other consoles. For the PS4 I chose Trails into Reverie. It was either this or its prequel, Trails of Cold Steel 4. To be honest with you, I can't really choose. Steel 4 has better story, Reverie has better gameplay. It's just so incredibly addicting. While most found the constant change of parties tedious, I found it enticing. I love JRPGs with tons of characters, so this fifth and final episode was right up my alley. I also think the combat evolved to its absolute best here. What a blast! I even completed the post-game here. Moving on to the PS5 with Octopath Traveler 2. You know, in my opinion, without the Trails games, Octopath 2 just has no competition. So far, it's my best pick for today's list as the best turn-based JRPG on PS5. I just think it learned from the very few mistakes its predecessor did, learned, and improved in terms of gameplay. However, I also still believe Octopath 1 has better narrative, but this one definitely doesn't stay behind. Most characters have a very endearing and memorable journey. Finally, it felt like a true interactive party where they share experiences and even episodes together. Yeah, this is a fantastic game, man. Let's go portable now with the PSP, and I picked Persona 3. My favorite Persona game, though I'm a bigger fan of the FES version on PS2. Here you got both the male and female protagonists to choose from, and also the ability to control, finally, your party members. Despite the PSP's limited capabilities in terms of interface, Persona 3 is still highly enjoyable and rewarding here. Best turn-based JRPG on the system, although Valkyrie Profile Lenneth is a very close second. The Trails in the Sky duology is absolutely worth mentioning as well. I guess most people will pick... let me see... Oh, I know! Dragon Ears Aria, of course! Moving on with the PS Vita, I picked Trails of Cold Steel 2. Yeah, you can tell I'm a big Trails fan. Persona 4 Golden for sure will be everyone's pick. Everyone but me, I guess. Close second though, up there with Cold Steel 1. But just like with Sky 2, this follow-up was also truthfully rewarding. We slowly started seeing things go into a mature, dark and political war first, only to finally intervene in this sequel after all that chaos. Range's journey to reunite with everybody is just quite mesmerizing. I think it's one of the best Trails games out there. Now let's go with...
Nintendo!
For the NES, I picked Dragon Warrior 4. There's not a lot to choose from when it comes to the NES. I could have picked the original Final Fantasy as it's such a classic, but I feel most of its successors far surpassed it. Maybe the same could be said about Dragon Quest IV, but alongside 3, I feel like this is the one where storytelling and true role-playing got more expansive, more fulfilling and more engaging. It just feels more fleshed out than the classic Pioneers everyone knows. Where's that damn remake of Dragon Quest III, Square Enix? SNES, Super Mario RPG. The contest between Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI is truly harsh even nowadays. So I picked the lovely Mario game instead, the one that I grew up with in my teens as the best turn-based JRPG on the Super Nintendo. Addictive, original, unique, very fun to play, everybody can play it, everybody can get into it. It has beautiful graphics, memorable music, and a challenge that gets progressively balanced. I think it's the perfect 16-bit role-playing game. Nintendo 64, Paper Mario. While not developed by Squaresoft but by Fire Emblem creators Intelligent Systems, it's still a blast to play. In my opinion, it's not as great as Super Mario RPG, but it makes up for the lack of a proper sequel we never got. Besides, what the hell else is there on the 64? It is the only pure and traditional turn-based RPG released outside Japan! Moving on to the GameCube, with Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean. Most of you won't argue my choice here. My favorite turn-based RPG on the GameCube is the original Baten Kaitos, although many will put its prequel up there too. But really, there's no solid competition for the king of turn-based in this console, one that sadly failed in the market when it comes to JRPGs. Kaitos has one of the most unique battle systems in JRPGs out there, period. Extremely beautiful graphics and masterful writing by the Chrono series author Masato Kato. Enough said. For the Wii, I chose Arc Rise Fantasia. Did you know there are only 3 turn-based JRPGs released outside of Japan on the Wii? There's Opuna, cool but not worthy of being here, and Dokapon Kingdom, which isn't exactly what I call a role-playing game. So we're left with the criminally overlooked Arc Rise Fantasia, a hardcore beast grind fest with terrible English dub, but with one heck of a story full of unexpected twists, and of course, that intricate and unique battle system with action points shared amongst the party. I doubt this game will ever get remastered or anything, but I still hope it will one day. With Japanese audio included, please. For the Wii U, Revenant Saga. No, I'm not picking that overrated piece of garbage that embarrassed SMT and Fire Emblem fans, well, most of them anyway. So instead I'm going with one of the best JRPGs published by Kemco from back in the day. You know how most of those are quite generic, even though they do feel like they're starting to slowly get better? Well, Revenant Saga is kinda dark, with some interesting twists and memorable storytelling. Yeah, the gameplay combat included is alright at best, but me praising the story should speak volumes. It's also available in a million other consoles, not just the Wii U. Finally, the Switch, I chose Shin Megami Tensei 5. SMT5 is just quite addictive to play. It may have received mixed reviews from diehards because of its storytelling or its left-wing shenanigans in the English dub, but it's still a phenomenal video game. Expansive exploration, tough challenge, easy to avoid enemies, no random encounters, classic press turn system in battle, great visuals for a Switch game, and the soundtrack? Damn! Let's go portable with the Game Boy. I picked Final Fantasy Legends 2. I'll confess I picked this game over any other because of nostalgia. It is the very first RPG I ever played in my life, and how could I ever forget how I felt? It was like no other video game in existence I had ever seen. You know the Saga series, right? Well, this is Saga 2 actually. They just changed the name in North America to milk the popularity of the Final Fantasy name. Anyway, I'm guessing other players will pick the Pokemon games instead, huh? Game Boy Color, Lufia, The Legend Returns. Once again, Pokemon seems like the popular choice here, but I'm picking Lufia The Legend Returns. Though, truth be told, I never owned a Game Boy Color and only emulated a few RPGs like this one, which is the reason why you very rarely see me reviewing anything from this console. The Legend Returns is a prequel to the first two games on the SNES, and while traditional styled, it's very different in terms of narrative and combat, with you having a lot of party members to control at a time. But it isn't confusing or anything, it's still good, easy to get into and enjoy, so there you go. Game Boy Advance, Final Fantasy VI Advance. Obviously, since I didn't choose this legendary masterpiece on the Super Nintendo, I'm doing it here, and it's actually a decent version of it to play. For starters, it's nowhere near as censored as the original version, so that's a good thing. It has improved sprites, character portraits in dialogue, and a secret dungeon was there. So yeah, great remaster here. It was either this or the Golden Sun duology, right? Worth mentioning those two. Oh yeah, and the Pokemon games. 10,000 of those on every Nintendo console. Moving on to the NDS with Radiant Historia. Enough Pokemon comments. Radiant Historia is the best turn-based JRPG, period. Oh well, Chrono Trigger is also here, I guess. What I found most exciting about this game was the maturity of the plot and how it aimed to be darker than most traditional JRPGs. I also thought the combat mechanics were very well crafted in an era where everything seemed like a copy of a copy of a copy, and the time travel mechanic, wrongfully compared to that of Trigger by the way, was a dream concept come true, the ability to go back and alter events to change a bad outcome. Not without its consequences though, so I'm glad they thought about that too. Yeah, this is my favorite turn-based JRPG on the DS. (3DS) Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse. I'm thinking you saw this one coming, considering I don't want to pick the same game twice on any console. Original SMT4 and Apocalypse are also a great consensus agreement for the best turn-based JRPG on 3DS. I chose Apocalypse because I found its gameplay mechanics, combat, and especially pacing to be excellent. Some hiccups were made to the dark and mature story with comedy and a Persona-like cast, but I got a very rewarding development for the characters in return. And I've done enough praise to the music already, which is undeniably a masterwork by Ryota Kosuka. And now, Microsoft. For the Xbox, there's Metal Dungeon. Meet the only turn-based JRPG that came out of Japan. No, that's a Western RPG. Metal Dungeon is a science fiction game where countries are at constant war. Apparently some evil sorcerers have escaped a research facility and a special elite force is sent after them. Your customizable characters are that force. You will explore a dungeon, the Metal Dungeon, with a party of 5. Battles will be played in turns, but like in the old Final Fantasy games, the enemy won't wait for your choices, so everything happens on real time. This isn't a great game, to be honest. It's got bad camera and exploration, barely any story, bland graphics and boring combat. It isn't bad, it's just mediocre. It shouldn't even be here in this list, but it's the only turn-based JRPG we got. No, that didn't come out of Japan. Are you even listening to what I've been saying on the video? Or are you just fast-forwarding everything? Yeah, you probably are. Xbox 360, I got Lost Odyssey. I think everyone will agree this is the best one of its kind. Still exclusive to the 360, but can be played on the late Xbox consoles with Game Pass apparently. Some call it a true Final Fantasy XIII and I agree, since it was developed mostly by Hironobu Sakaguchi with music from Nobuo Uematsu. Mature story, great cast, solid combat with a twist, amazing visuals, yeah, it's a splendid game alright. Maybe, just maybe, some gamers will pick the real FF13 or Blue Dragon or Resonance of Fate or The Last Remnant, or maybe we should just move on. Xbox One, Dragon Quest XI. Well, didn't pick this one on PS4 or Switch, so might as well choose it here. It's a good third home for the game after all, nothing wrong with this version. I think this is a game everyone should play since it's very easy to get into with excellent gameplay, exploration, music and story. It isn't a grindfest either like most of its precursors, at least not until the post-game. You know what, it doesn't matter where you play this game as long as you do. And for the Xbox Series X, Yakuza Like a Dragon. I was gonna choose Persona 5 Royal, but for once, let's let Ichiban Kasuga win this one. 100% convinced I wasn't gonna like it, and I ended up becoming a huge fan, because it's not what it seems to be, an extremely addictive video game with impressive storytelling and combat. It's just awesome! I've yet to play its sequel, but you should let me know if you think it's better than this game. Let's move on to Sega! Alright, for the Master System there's Phantasy Star. The classic pioneer from Sega and one of the Big Four. The Big Four to me were the defining JRPGs that influenced everything worldwide back then. Final Fantasy, Dragon Warrior, Ys, and of course Phantasy Star. Well, not a fan of this game, but I respect its huge historical impact a lot. Besides, it is the only turn-based JRPG on the Master System that we got! Alright, there's also that. Yeah. No freaking way, let's move on. Sega Genesis, Phantasy Star 4 of course. Naturally, it would be hard to disagree the fourth and final entry in the original saga is the king of turn-based RPGs on the Genesis. Its predecessors are good too, but they weren't as groundbreaking or outstanding as this one, with much better gameplay, pacing, visuals, music and combat. Everything was masterfully created to surpass them all. Definitely the best one on the system. Sega CD, Lunar the Silver Star. Not much to choose from aside from the Lunar games here. I picked the first one because it seemed like the better choice, although you can't go wrong with the sequel. Both were somewhat influential and classic enough to be ported to the PlayStation 1. I'm a fan of the Sega CD, and I do recommend these versions, but let's just say they aren't the best. But for their time, they sure were very charming and a lot of people have big nostalgia for them. Sega Saturn, Panzer Dragoon Saga. The legendary, ultra-rare and expensive game on the system, it's a spin-off of the on-rail shooters that are more famous. This one has a standalone story with only one character and his dragon as playable. Battles are hybrid, mixing action and turn-based since everything happens on real time, but you gotta wait for the action gauge to fill up before you can act. It's pretty intuitive with some cool camera angles and animations. Yeah, this is a good one. For the Dreamcast, I got Grandia 2. The consensus will surely pick Skies of Arcadia as the internet keeps begging Sega for a remaster. Well, I found Grandia 2 a more enjoyable game, with a slightly darker story, better comedy, with more unique features such as an unusual protagonist and a very interesting female co-star. I also prefer the battle mechanics here, an exciting and interactive turn-based combat which evolved greatly from the previous Grandia release. The Game Gear, we've got Defenders of Oasis. This is a generic turn-based RPG based on the 1001 Nights story. But it's the only one that came out of Japan! It's definitely better than Metal Dungeon on Xbox, that's for sure. It's traditional with towns, dungeons and areas to explore, random encounters and a party of characters joining a prince trying to save the world by fighting God. Yup, one of those. It's nothing special, it's decent at best, and according to Wikipedia, it was a commercial success, praised by critics. Okay. Finally, the TurboGrafx 16. I got Dragon Slayer: The Legend of Heroes. I would have picked the Cosmic Fantasy games since they were recently remastered on the Switch, but I haven't played them. Instead, I chose the very first Legend of Heroes game ever made. Nothing to do with the Trail sub-series though. This one with horrible English dub so bad it's good, high encounter rate, grinding forced on you, and a very dated interface, but believe it or not, it's still very worth checking out. Story's interesting, combat is fun, characters are interesting too, interface and loading times are fast, music is fantastic, so yeah, play it. Or if at least just to see how the popular Legend of Heroes series began. Nope, no RPGs from the Neo Geo. I haven't played a single one of them. What do you want me to do? Well, I'll get to one of them one day. One day. Sorry, Neo Geo. Anyway, guys, that's my list. I'm pretty sure a lot of you disagreed with it, but remember, it was full of my own personal choices, my favorite turn-based JRPG on every single console. Yeah, even if the title says otherwise. Why don't you share yours in the comments? Yeah, go ahead and do that. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!